Catarina here in studio. I'm joined by Mason Young, and we are live right now on the 100.1 Moose FM Facebook page. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Oh, we're live on Facebook.
Yes, we're live on Facebook. We're live on air. We're here. We're doing the thing.
Doing the thing. Okay.
Mason, thank you so much for coming in. I want to ask you about your musical journey.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I'm an old guy, so it's been a very, very long journey. Boy. It's first live gigs, I think I was 12 or 13 years old.
Wow.
And it was one of those things that I got to do. But I knew I was going to do this since I was like 5, 6, whatever. And my mother used to be able to not worry about me on the farm because she said, oh, yeah, I know where he is. He's out in the gravel pile singing or something silly like that. So she never had to go look for me. And if the dog was singing along with me, that was even better.
So how did you get into playing and creating music? Was it the gravel?
Yes. It was my drum set now. I think at first I had a little band when I was in junior high, and we wrote some songs because we couldn't play anybody else's songs, and that was kind of fun.
Okay.
And then I had babysat for a whole year to save up for I'm a guitar player. I play lots of different things, but I'm a guitar player that's my actual trade now. But so I saved up for a whole year to buy a bass guitar.
Okay.
And on our very first gig, I made the exact amount of money to pay for a bass guitar. So I'm
No way.
well, guess what I'm not doing anymore? I will not be babysitting. I'm going to learn to play bass guitar so it's always been, sadly, it's always been about the money. I was like, wow. So then I was in high school and whatnot, Saskatchewan, farm kid, and had the opportunity to play in a band that did weddings and cabarets and stuff like that because it was the 80s and things were still kind of pumping that way.
Yeah.
And there was years where I made almost as much money as my mother, who worked in the bank.
Wow.
Playing guitar or bass or whatnot back in the day when there was still some revenue and it was still work. So that's where it spawned into. And then, of course, I went to college in Vancouver and studied music and all that good stuff. And it fell out of vogue for me a few times because the music business is a
Very up and
challenging.
down.
Yeah, it's a
Yes.
challenging one to make a living in. But I ended up in the Kootenays, and I opened up a little music store that turned into a big music store. And we had video and recording studios, and I've worked with a whole bunch of really cool artists. I used to
Wow.
tech at the theater where we had all the big artists come through, and we had mobile staging and all that wonderful stuff. And then one day in 2010, the world changed for us. We had some catastrophic things occur in our house and whatnot. And a couple years later, we're in Fort St. John, and it was the best move we ever made, family-wise.
Okay.
Not the best move for the music industry for myself. In fact, I didn't even play guitar for 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and one day I did start playing a little bit in the house, and my wife was very, very upset with me. And I'm like, man, I haven't played guitar for like years. And
Yeah.
she said, no, it's just such a waste that you're not playing.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, well, that hurts.
So I have a question.
Okay.
And you said you didn't play guitar for 5 years. What was that moment, if you feel comfortable sharing, that made you pick up that guitar again?
Oh, boy. I'm not actually sure. Oh, yes, I am sure. I was actually cleaning up.
Okay.
And I literally had the guitar case fall on my foot. And so then I moved it. I'm like, well, maybe I should see if it's still okay. 'Cause I used to have dozens of guitars, and I was down to like 2, I believe. And so I picked it up. I'm like, hey, this is still fun. I remember this. And it was like an old friend.
Yeah. The
And-
passion just reignited for you.
I don't think it ever went away. In fact, there's this horrible underlying sorrow of kind of squish it down. And we had some traumatic events that occurred, and that's what caused me to leave. So, but coming back and playing, I'm like, this is fun, and maybe I should do it for fun instead of trying or paying the bills with it.
Yeah.
And that has been a nice change.
So, you seem to have a very wide range of influences when you play. Who's been your more prominent influence in music?
Oh, that would have to go back to like the 80s, way, 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 way back.
Okay.
I was one of those kids that was starstruck with the Ozzy Osbourne and Van Halen and anything that was, 80s glam shred like guitar playing. But then I realized that there wasn't the paycheck
Okay.
in that. So I learned, we started playing some country, and I'm like, that's pretty cool. And then I realized that the folks in the audience actually like polkas and waltzes. And I'm 16 years old, and I'm going home playing Van Halen, and on the weekends I'm playing polkas and waltzes and the top 40 from the whatever year we were at. And then I realized that my job is to entertain.
Yeah.
My job is to create the experience. My job is to, in the bar, to sell beer.
Mm-hmm.
And once I made that connection, genre no longer mattered.
Okay.
And music is music.
Do you feel that you have a country influence in specific for when you play those country songs?
To a small degree, I suppose. I love the 90s country.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because that was basically where all the 80s rockers who didn't quite become 80s rockers, they twanged it up a bit and bluesed it up a bit. And you've got guitar players like Dan Huff who played with these metal bands in the 80s and then became like Shania's guitar player for albums and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And so I looked at it and go like, well, of course. Let's just do this. Plus, I like the storytelling from the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my throwback. Probably would be to that. And what I like about country music more than or country genre styled music
Mm-hmm.
is the story.
Yes.
It's always about telling a story, and I think that if we go back to the origination of music was a way of telling a story so other people would remember what was going on, whether it was like an educational thing or whatnot. And I think some music has lost that, but that's probably where it comes from.
So what inspires you to write music today?
My muse. What's my muse? Okay, so the song that we were talking about earlier, or my song, That Beautiful Day,
Mm-hmm.
actually was inspired by a lady named Mel Robbins.
Okay.
And Mel Robbins is a podcaster and a book writer, and she wrote this song called The High Five Rule. And the idea is basically if you want to start your day out properly, you should look in the mirror and give yourself a high five, because nobody else is going to do that first thing in the morning. And I thought, well, that's kind of a cool thing. So I tried it. Felt really silly for about a week. It felt really, really silly because I was getting up for work at 4 a.m. I'm like, this is goofy. And then I realized that if you start your attitude from the day, from the beginning, that does actually set a pace. So that's where that one kind of sparked from. And I had to write, the choruses and the bridge, or the choruses and the verses to get to the bridge where I actually say to do that.
Yeah.
It was kind of an odd thing. But yeah, I think the inspiration comes from once in a while you just zone out and pick up an instrument and some little spark occurs, and then sometimes the spark turns into something worthwhile, and sometimes you really just throw it away, but that's okay.
Does she know that this song was inspired by her?
I've actually sent her a couple emails. I did send her the song. There was one response on Facebook from probably a social media manager or whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
but she's a fairly famous and very, very busy person, so I'm not really worried about that.
So we are going to be playing your newest song, Beautiful Day, here after we're done. But we want to know where we can see you next in Fort St. John.
Oh, that's easy. Next weekend during the Energetic County Fair,
Mm-hmm.
I get the honor of hosting all the stuff that's going on in the pub.
Oh, amazing.
So in between the bands and whatnot, or people are just drifting in and out or whatnot, I'm going to be in the pub, and I'm probably going to call it an all request weekend. So I have this 200 and some song set list, and so I might make it an audience thing and see if I'm up for the challenge of doing a request weekend.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I hear that you're also going to be at Fredfest in August.
Oh, that's correct. Yes.
Did I just remind you?
That's right. Well, that's August. That's a long time from now. Yeah, I'm going to be playing at Fredfest. And that one is going to be a little bit different because I'm actually going to do an all original set.
Oh, wow.
Which I don't normally do, because again, I believe my job in the pub is to, or in those venues, is to engage with the audience and sell beer, which is my actual job. That's how I get paid, and that's how I get to stay playing. So I'm not a big proponent of heavy original music in those environments. I will throw some songs in.
Yes.
But for Fred Fest, it is a festival. So yes, I'm gonna actually retool some of the old stuff and do an all original act.
That is very exciting. Well, thank you very much, Mason. I really enjoyed having this conversation with you.
It's been fun, Catarina.
Yes, and I will see you out and about in the city, it sounds like.
Apparently, yes. Thank you.
Now, we are going to play Beautiful Day by Mason Young after this.